Now, they're billing it as their country's biggest ever upgrade in defence ties. That is, the US President Joe Biden rolled out the red carpet for the Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida with a lavish dinner at the White House. The two forging that relationship in a bid to counter a resurgent China. The two leaders unveiling plans to restructure the US military command in Japan. It's the biggest such change since the 1960s.
Tonight, we pledge to keep going. We stand at an inflection point where the decisions we make now are going to determine the course of the future for decades to come.
I believe that the Pacific Ocean has brought Japan and the United States together and so close because of the pioneering spirit of those who came before us and frontier spirit that we all have in common.
And we're just getting, in fact, a reaction to that coming into us from China. This from the Foreign Ministry saying, ignoring China's grave concerns, the US and Japan have smeared and attacked China on Taiwan and maritime issues, grossly interfered in China's internal affairs and seriously violated the basic norms governing international relations. That just coming into us from the China's Foreign Ministry. Well, our international affairs editor, Kethevane Gorjestani, is joining me here on set now. Kethevane, a historic then bolstering of defence links. What are the details, first of all, of this upgrade?
Well, as you said, military ties were really the key focus of this meeting between Biden and Kishida. About 70 new military agreements were announced during this visit, including this restructuring of the U.S. command in Japan. This is in order to get the U.S. military and the Japanese military to better cooperate in the region, especially if a crisis were to arise. That, of course, pointing to the situation in the Indo-Pacific with China. There's also, for example, this new air missile defense system that will also include Australia on top of Japan and the United States. So really about strengthening those ties. There were other more symbolic gestures of cooperation. For example, the idea of having Japanese astronauts join NASA moon missions, which would make a Japanese the first non-American on the moon when that happens. The two also brushing aside the areas where they disagree. I'm thinking, of course, about the Nippon Steel move on U.S. steel. That was something that they tried to set aside, not to really focus on. This is partly, of course, about China, but it is also a way to sort of Trump-proof the relation between the U.S. And Japan, and that will likely be really much in focus when Kishida actually addresses the U.S. Congress with two major messages to especially the Republicans. One is that the U.S. must stay involved in global affairs and not retreat towards America first. That is a direct message in case Donald Trump returns, and a message calling for the passage of that $95 billion package that's been stuck in Congress. We've, of course, focused on the Ukraine and the Israel aspect of that package, but that package includes also billions of dollars for allies in the Indo-Pacific, and the Japanese Prime Minister likely to insist that that is also very important.
And what we've seen already is going to widen, isn't it, today? The Philippine President, Bongbong Marcos, is going to join Kishida and Biden for a trilateral summit. His presence is pretty significant, isn't it, given all three leaders have those major concerns in common in the Asia-Pacific region?
Absolutely, and this is going to be where that focus on China really comes into the spotlight. There are two major issues when it comes to China in the Indo-Pacific. One is, of course, Taiwan and China's increasingly aggressive stance towards Taiwan. But there's also the South China Sea, where China has been amping up pressure on areas that, according to international law, belong to the Philippines. So very important for the Filipinos to have that alliance with the Americans and with the Japanese. And it is interesting also to note that there have been 5 state or official visits since Joe Biden took office. And if you put aside the first one, which was Emmanuel Macron of France, the 4 others were Asia-Pacific countries, and 3 of them were the Quad countries, Australia, India, and Japan. So really, it shows how much the Biden administration wants to focus on the Indo-Pacific, wants to keep it in the spotlight. This was supposed to be probably the biggest foreign policy element of Biden's administration. Of course, that because before the focus was forced to turn to the wars in Ukraine, in Gaza. And there is also an aspect that is sort of preemptive to what you mentioned about the reaction from China, was that yesterday, both Kishida and Biden insisting that these were defensive moves. It was a defensive alliance, that this was not about attacking China, but rather preparing and really strengthening that alliance to counter China's influence there. But it wasn't supposed to be seen as an attack. Definitely not the message that the Chinese got.